Hello and welcome to The Single Spark, previously known as The Single Girl's Guide to Life. This is the podcast for all things single and sparkling. Whether you're looking to get your spark back as a single or you're looking to make sparks with others, this is the podcast for you, because all it takes is one single spark. And with that, let's get on with the show. Welcome back to another episode of The Single Spark. Now, today, I was going to talk about red flags. Came up as one of the ideas that I could talk about. And then when I was putting it together, I was like, red flags are not my vibe. They're not what I sell myself on, even though they're a great thing to talk about because they get people's attention all the time. But my issue with red flags is that people seem to think that every tiny little thing is a red flag. And I have this in the module on the Back to Dating course that's now called The Single Spark, which is coming very soon if it's not already open to you to have a little look at. But even in that module, I talk about the fact that red flags really are the reddest of flags. They are the things that almost go without saying that we shouldn't have to be accepting. Anything serious is a serious red flag. Any kind of physical abuse, no chance. We're not talking about it. That's not an option. Full friggin' stop. Red flag or not. Like a real red flag it's something that we can all agree on is a problem. So something like being terrible at texting, lying, treating people badly. So they're socially not correct. And we would think that of anyone, whether we were dating them or not. If someone's rude down the road, then that's not great. That's a red flag. But it's when someone says they don't have a car, what a red flag. Okay, it's a preference, and a lot of people would expect someone that they date to have a car. But if you live in the city, it kind of makes sense that you don't have a car. And, okay, maybe what you really mean is that you're after someone that has the financial security to have a new car or something of that nature. And I don't think that's a red flag. That's a preference. I wouldn't say that should be a prerequisite unless you really live in the sticks and they practically need a car to get to see you. That seems a bit more reasonable. But in terms of dating and the things that really matter in dating, that's not a red flag. And the term seems to have lost its meaning. And it just didn't feel right for me to do that. So instead of focusing on the things that we shouldn't be looking for, because we can then become really oversensitive and really picky about all of these things, and then you're hearing this person say, well, they've got to have a car, and this person say, well, they need to have X, Y, Z, and then you don't even know what you're looking for anymore because there's so many things that are red flags, and you don't know whether it's a red flag or not. And this is where having your non-negotiables, knowing what is acceptable to you and what you are looking for, is the most important thing. So if you haven't already, head to the show notes and grab that link so that you can start to work out what you're really looking for in a person that goes beyond the shallow things of do they have a car or not, unless there's practical reasons, and start focusing on the things that are going to matter to you. And I want to continue this episode with a bit more positivity than that and encourage you to look for the things that are the most important things to observe on a first date and beyond, into the first 4 weeks, the first 30 days of this blossoming potential relationship. We don't know if it's going to go anywhere. In 4 weeks, you can be hopeful, but you probably won't know necessarily by the end of it. I don't know, did I know a month in with Jason? It was more like we're still working stuff out, but it was very positive, I think, within the first 4 weeks. And this is going to be a lovely episode for you to enjoy. And I want you to be optimistic about your dating experience, not thinking that everything has to be a red flag every 5 seconds, which is why I made this rather than the red flag episode. So let's jump in with one of my favourite elements of this, which is I don't want you focusing on, is this person the one on your first date? There's just one focus really that you want to be working out on the first date, which is, do I want to see this person again? That is the only thing you should be worrying about on a first date. And quite often that can be determined by, instead of focusing on, is this person the one, you're asking, is this fun? Is this fun? Am I enjoying it? Am I staying present? Do they make me feel comfortable? Did they seem comfortable? And is it relaxed, fun, exciting? And I'm just in the moment of whatever I'm doing. Because if that's the energy that you've got on this date, if it's not too hard to create conversation, if you're both engaged in whatever activity has been organised, hopefully it's an activity because that's always more fun, like, that's what dating is meant to be. It's not meant to be an interview. It's not meant to be are you ready for marriage and kids today? Your first dates are the best dates because you don't actually have to see them ever again, and they're just meant to be fun. And if you find someone that it's fun enough, that you've got enough interest in, then that's when you say, yes, I do want to see you again. If they think the same, hopefully they will say the same. But like, just think how much that is going to impact you showing up fantastically on a date and actually getting somebody to want to see you again for a second date, compared to, are they showing me any red flags? Like, we have this all wrong. And I know that negative marketing is really impactful. Why do you think the Daily Mail writes so many negative clickbaity headlines? Because we all love them. Everyone's like, oh, the news is so doom and gloom. Yes, but we click all the doom and gloom, unfortunately, and it makes sense to all the behaviour patternists in the world. But I'm not of that ilk. I want you to go out and have fun on your dates, and one way to help you get out of that is to stop focusing on red flags and overthinking and watching out for little hints that they're not going to be good, they're not going to be a lovely person, and focus on just having fun. That's your first date, really. And I mean, the whole thing should feel pretty easy and fun. But the next thing then is nicely segued into, because rather than critiquing every little move, expecting them to be absolutely perfect, not put a foot wrong, and be brilliant the entire time, which I mean, they should be pretty brilliant, but, you know, human. We're looking for consistent patterns in the first 30 days. They're going to be great, probably on date number 1 within reason, and date number 2 if you get one, maybe date number 3 if you get one in that time too. But otherwise, we are looking for those consistent patterns. So what do they do before those dates? Do they text you a couple of hours before to confirm that it's on? Do they follow up the date with a text message after? How do they conduct themselves on each of those dates in the different scenarios? Mini golf versus being in a bar versus being sat at dinner. Like, how are they? Because one little incident of, I don't know, not saying thank you, not holding the door open for you or for anyone else, like, can just be an error. But if every time that you've gone out, they've not been very nice to the servers, or not been nice to you, or anything like that, they've not communicated before the events, maybe then there's not that natural compatibility of what you need and what you're looking for in a person versus how they're acting and behaving. Whereas if it's just a one-off, so they didn't say thank you for something, and maybe that's because they were distracted by a notification came in on their phone, or something actually did happen at work that day, so date number 2 is not that great, but date number 1 and 3 and 4 are absolutely fine, that's a one-off. But if date number 1 is great and 2, 3 and 4 aren't, something's happened, what's going on here? Like, this is a repeated thing. So rather than holding everyone to this high standard that if one tiny thing happens, that's it, they're written off, I would say that's a red flag in you, because you're not understanding of a human being having a human reactor to something. However, when they continue to do that as a pattern ongoing, that then becomes a problem. So we're looking for a positive pattern, not that perfection that's going to keep you locked in and thinking someone must be idyllic, and never put a foot wrong, and you just have this insanely off the scale high expectation of somebody. That also leads on to then the idea around looking at, as the time goes on, how that communication's going in between, how conversations are going in terms of what you guys are looking for in the future and the long term. Because there is a time and a place. After date 1, it's kind of open, but let's still not go too strong. But it is about going deeper in the first 30 days. It's about asking questions on what matters to them most, about finding out about why past relationships didn't work, and seeing how they talk about that. And then looking at how your lives maybe kind of fit together. So if, for example, you've struggled to get 2, 3, 4 dates in, and not just because of like one-off scheduling. This is like a thing where your work patterns are totally out of sync. One of you works shifts and one of you works days. One of you works night shifts and one of you works days. Then, as much as this might be going well, like if you can only squeeze in 1 date in this whole month, maybe this isn't going to work. Obviously, if it's a one-off, they're away on holiday for 3 weeks, and just put the whole thing on pause. It may be that something happens in those 3 weeks where one of you meets someone else, and so be it, doesn't pursue. That actually happened to me. I was speaking to someone, and then they were off doing some sort of festival for a time, and I was like, hey... Oh no, I think they were like, hey, I'm off, but when I get back, give me a message. I was like, yeah, absolutely fine, no worries. In that time, I started speaking to Jason, met Jason, and then they did message me and like, hey, I'm back, how are you doing? And I was like, gonna be totally straight with you, like, totally met someone, and it's going well, and I'm really not interested in pursuing a conversation with anyone else right now. If anything changes, like, absolutely, I'll drop you a message, and obviously, that never happened. But going to the places of interest to talk about that you enjoy, going to the depth of, I mean, it's easy. It's easier for me when someone has read some of the books that I read, or they listen to the same kind of podcasts, because then they have that level of sort of personal development language going on. It is obvious to me that Jason was a good match when he started talking about podcasts like Chris Williamson's. There was another one that he mentioned, actually. Maybe I mentioned someone that had been on Chris Williamson's podcast. Maybe Johan Hari, something like that. And so he knew of them via that. Or it could have been Jay Shetty. I can't remember exactly. I can't remember. It's so long ago now. But, you know, it meant there was the crossover of common topic of interest. And then to me, that told me values. And obviously knowing that he's a family person, not that family is important to me, but, you know, being a kind person and caring, I could see that through his actions and the way that he spoke about his children. You know, all of that came out in just our natural conversation of wanting to find out about someone and talk. And I should probably look back at our old conversations, because that would tell me some of the BS stuff we probably talked about that would have shown this amongst, because at the start we didn't have many phone calls or anything like that, just because of the timing and the way it was all set up, apart from in person. And that was, I think we had a date and then we had another date like 2 weeks later or something like that. It wasn't loads of dates at the beginning. But all of this should be creating this beautiful sense of emotional safety and trust. That when you are exploring some of these topics, whether they're the trivial, I remember we did discuss kind of disc profiles, and he told me about a different one that I did the test for there and then, and we discussed that. I remember that. So, you know, that's fun. And when you're doing that, you should be able to discuss it and share what you think of that personality diagnosis of yourself, and see what they say about that, and that they listen to you, show respect, and that there'll be things that you're not ready to talk about, and maybe they aren't ready to talk about as well. And you see them setting boundaries, and you see them accepting the boundaries that you're setting too. Of, you know, that's something I would talk to you about, but not right now. It's not because I'm hiding anything. It's just so I haven't really worked through myself yet. So give me a week or two, and maybe I'll be in a place where I can talk about that a bit more. There is an art to pacing what you're sharing. It doesn't have to be share absolutely everything, get it all on the table straight away. I don't know when I would have brought up my divorce per se, pretty early on because of his circumstance of being in that scenario. So it kind of allowed me to bring that up probably earlier than I sometimes bring that up for other people that had otherwise been single. And it was always when they did that weird line that was like, oh, so why is someone like you single? Right, okay. Great line. I'm sure it's meant to be a compliment. I think we've all had that one, and we all don't love that one. No, thank you. So yeah, I'd probably bring it up then. And I haven't been single for that long. But yes. Just, there's a tact to saying things like that, isn't there? And hey, that probably comes back to the communication styles, and I'm just like, have more tact. But otherwise, everything else should be making you feel comfortable. Like it's easy, and that there's a good basis and level of respect to work with that's not freaking you out. That They can comfort you even if your anxious attachment style gets triggered, if it's coming up for you. And there is a side to that you need to be managing that too. But part of managing that is communicating that to someone else and seeing what their reaction is. And hopefully it's of support. And, oh, okay, I get that. How can I help with that? What do I need to do to help you help yourself as well? And then we come on to the last one. And this can often be undervalued, actually, because of the Disney princess visual story that we're given, which is like Prince Charming fall in love and you should be with them all the time, all day, every day, from the minute that you fall in love. And this is where we end up texting loads. It's where you end up suddenly going from not having a relationship at all, being single, and suddenly you're basically living together within a week because you go to his and then they come to yours, and there's no day on your own anymore. And we should be looking for a balance between developing that connection and that co-creation of what that life looks like versus your independence. That's what's really important in the first 30 days, because there's nothing that is unsexier and nothing that runs a relationship out like that than rushing, than accelerating everything at 100 miles an hour. And that's when you get giddy and the obsessive hormones come out, all of that stuff that's all like, oh my God, I'm in love, I found the one. And it all comes crashing down weeks later because you suddenly compromise absolutely everything that we have been working on in X amount of months and years to get you fulfilled. You put it all on the line for this one person that showed up and yes, did show you a decent sign, but you lost sight of everything that was your own. Everything became about your time with them and how you were as a couple, and suddenly you lost all of the stabilizers, all of the support pillars that were there and had been built up, that were your friends, that were your work, that was everything else that mattered when that person was not there in existence. Gone in a puff, or just, diminished down to almost a negative point. And the only time you ever go out now in this first month is if you're not seeing them. Like, they come above everyone and all else. What we're looking for is someone that actually encourages you and says, I can't come to yours tonight and you can't come to mine. Setting a nice healthy boundary with you. You need to have some time on your own. I need some time on my own. If you want to go see friends, go do it. That would be great. I need my time, and I want you to go and see your friends this evening because you haven't seen them in ages. It's about making sure that you are still a person as well as whatever developing relationship that you're in. And the mistake is made that once you find the one, you are one. You are always an individual person in your relationship, and that cannot be compromised, because if it does, that's when you feel like you can never leave, that you could never be without this person. And that's when things start ending up in compromised positions, because you're worried. You're worried about what's going to happen if you don't clutch onto that person, if you don't sit there all day, every day, talking to them, being with them. They're going to leave. I mean, that really is an anxious attachment style coming out if you can't leave them be. But you've got to keep all your support networks there in case something happens. Because your life is more than your relationship status. A lot of people forget that over time, and we lose our friends. And that's why we still have lonely people that are in relationships, because they thought that the relationship was going to be the thing that made them happy. They thought the relationship was going to be everything. And they forgot to keep their friends, to make new ones along the way, because they thought they were fulfilled with everything that would bring. And it didn't. So let's just recap. We're focusing on fun instead of focusing on the one. And the only question you need to ask yourself really is, do I want to see this person next time on your first date? After that, we are looking at communication styles, openly sharing what goes on and getting a little bit vulnerable. We're watching out for patterns, not perfection. We're not holding to such a high standard that the minute you make one mistake, it's over. But you can communicate about that. And in turn, all of that starts to build emotional safety and trust. A place that you can express yourself and talk, and they too can share, and you listen to them as much as they listen to you. And lastly, it's about remembering yourself as an individual around everything that is being built slowly but surely in this format as a potential couple. Let me know what you think of those, and if you are ready to take the first step back to dating and not wasting your time, then the Single Spark program is very nearly here and on its way. You can get all of the information below and start taking the first steps to getting back to dating in the notes. Until next time, keep sparkling.